we've all witnessed the incredible shift in public perception on the issue of transgender, which some years back was hardly anything that was talked about. What do you do if you're a parent and your child says, "Mommy, I'm really a boy, or I'm really a girl"? What do you say?
No, it's okay. I think first of all, it depends on the age of the child and kind of where your child's at. So for a young child, a lot of times they're just confused. They're hearing this from the culture. It may be cool. They're being told at very young ages that they're supposed to choose their gender and figure out who they are. So some good guidance will go a long way in those situations. And then asking them, sometimes just asking really good questions, asking them to explain what they mean, ask them what they feel. And honestly, the terminology is changing almost by the day. So what something meant a year ago may not be what it means today, and it may not be what they think it means. And then, counseling, if they've had any kind of emotional trauma, there's a number of things that could have fed into the reasons that they're wanting to do this. So some good biblical counseling, and vet the counselor, because not all Christian counselors are biblical counselors. There's a big difference. But if you have a one that is an adult, I can attest, as an adult, by the time I embraced this, I was not willing to listen to anyone. I wish that I had been able to tell somebody earlier how I was feeling. I think that's one thing we really need to encourage our kids that they can come to us with whatever they're feeling. It's so hard for kids to talk about their struggles. But if you have a prodigal that is not willing to talk to you and they've cut you off, don't underestimate the value of your prayers. I can tell you that it was like the whole time that I was living that lifestyle, to my parents, it looked like I was going deeper and deeper into the lifestyle, but actually God was also drawing me. And so there was like this breadcrumb trail the whole time. God was pursuing me, and he was answering their prayers. So don't ever underestimate that. And keep the communication open if you can, but don't compromise in order to do that. There was a point where the father of the prodigal son let him go, and he wouldn't have had any communication with him, but he prepared himself to be ready and, to be not have any unforgiveness or bitterness, because the father could have been really bitter towards that son, but he was ready to receive him.
Is it true that the worst thing you could do, from our perspective, is affirm that child in the perceived identity? So if it's a little boy, says he's a girl, we'll dress him up as a girl, give him a girl's name. In other words, that ultimately that's going to make it harder for him to live normally?
Yeah, even the science is on our side now, that when you do things like that to a child, you are bringing in confusion to their mind, the development of even the mind itself. When you look at pornography images, it brings a reconstruction, an actual erosion to the brain. So how much more so with bad behaviors and the confusion of the development of a child when the brain doesn't even solidify until age 25. And so it's really important to know that we need to be gender affirming. And of course, that begins with having a healthy mom and a healthy dad in a home representing the image of God and a loving environment to nurture that child, to bring forth what would be the image of what they would aspire to. And I want to just to mention too, one of the things that we get a lot, our parents are grieving. Our biggest support group right now are grieving parents. And I use a book called The Parenting Prodigals by Phil Waldrop. And he has 6 points in that book. But one of the first points, it's so important that if we have in any way contributed to sin to our children, that we get that right, but don't spiral down into a place of unceasing introspection. It's really important to get your conscience clear and then offer hope by continued that place of repentance, but living a godly life yourself.
And on the science end, you don't hear this much, but about 80% of all children who identify as transgender, once they go through puberty, don't. About 80%. Whereas if you reinforce the wrong identity, it makes things much more difficult as they get older. And by the way, I've had interesting conversations by a woman who now goes by the name of Scott Nugent. She wrote an article that Newsweek published a few months ago. For 2 years, she was trying to get it published. So this is someone who's gone full-blown female to male and wrote this article. Newsweek published it, which I was shocked to see. At the end of the article, she says, I don't care who you are, conservative, evangelical, we have to work together. What she is screaming from the rooftops, don't do this to children. She talks about the terrible mistakes she made in her own life and is shouting from the rooftops, it's child abuse. So this is not a believer, this is someone in a very different viewpoint, but I said, let's work together for the sake of the children. So we must take this very, very seriously.